To understand the darkness that descended in August 1970, you first have to understand the light that was extinguished. For decades, Uruguay was the exception. Tucked between the turbulent giants of Brazil and Argentina, this small nation was an anomaly. They called it the Switzerland of America, and they believed it. It wasn't just a slogan, it was a lived reality. While much of the continent trembled under the weight of coups and instability, Montevideo was a sanctuary, a country built around a strong middle class, high literacy, and social laws so advanced they were decades ahead of their time. This was a place where politics was debated over mate in the park, not settled with guns in the street, where a president could walk the avenues without a phalanx of bodyguards. It felt permanent. It felt safe. The Rambla stretched for miles, a symbol of openness, embracing the Rio de la Plata. The architecture whispered of Europe, but the soul was unmistakably South American, warm, intellectual, and peaceful. But in the Cold War, peace was often just an intermission. History rarely announces itself with sirens. Sometimes it arrives quietly, with a handshake, with a title, with promises of security. By the late 1960s, as fear of communism spread like a fever through Washington, Uruguay drew new attention, not as a model to be admired, but as a problem to be solved. And into this calm, cultivated democracy stepped an American advisor. His name was Dan Mitrione. On paper, the man who arrived was invisible. Dan Mitrione, a former police chief from tiny Richmond, Indiana, a devout Catholic, a father of 9 children. To the public, he was a dull, benevolent figure, a traffic safety consultant sent by USAID to help professionalize Uruguay's police force. He was the man you called to fix radio systems or reorganize patrol routes. He was safe, he was mundane. But traffic consultants don't usually attract this kind of attention. July 31st, 1970. A cold winter morning in Montevideo. Mitrione leaves his home in the quiet suburb of Carrasco and climbs into the back seat of an official diplomatic car. He doesn't know it yet, but the clock has already run out. At a quiet intersection, a truck suddenly swings across the road, blocking the way. A pickup pulls in tight behind, boxed in. Men with machine guns step out of the shadows. They don't shout, they don't hesitate. They move with surgical precision. They are the Tupamaros. In seconds, the driver is subdued. Dan Mitrione is gone, dissolved into the city. Across town, in a perfectly synchronized strike, a Brazilian diplomat is abducted at the exact same moment. The Switzerland of America shatters. The illusion of safety evaporates. As shockwaves ripple through Washington and Montevideo, one question rises above the panic. Why? Why the man from Indiana? Why the father of 9? Why kidnap the traffic consultant? Unless, of course, he wasn't there for the traffic. To understand why they took him, you first have to understand who they were. Forget the stereotype. These were not dirty guerrillas hacking through jungle undergrowth with machetes. These were the Tupamaros. They were law students, architects, doctors, poets. They wore suits, not fatigues. They didn't fight in the mountains. They fought in the cafes, the neighborhoods, and the sewers of Montevideo. And for a time, they were cool. They were the Robin Hoods of the Southern Cone. They robbed the country's most exclusive casino and handed the money to workers. They hijacked food trucks and delivered milk to the slums. They exposed corruption with theater, timing, and a grin. They made the government look clumsy. They made revolution look stylish. But by August 1970, the games were over. When they took Dan Mitrione, they weren't asking for money. They were demanding a microphone. Days after the abduction, the Tupamaros released a communique, and with it, the traffic consultant story collapsed. They claimed the man from Indiana was not there to teach road safety. They claimed he was a specialist in a very different discipline. Advanced interrogation techniques. The allegations were detailed, and they were horrifying. According to the Tupamaros, Mitrione had indeed been sent to modernize Uruguay's police, but not their patrol cars. He was modernizing their dungeons. Witnesses spoke of a soundproof room in the basement of police headquarters, of precise lectures on the controlled use of electricity. The accusation was chillingly pragmatic. Mitrione was not teaching them how to kill. Anyone could do that. He was allegedly teaching them exactly how much pain a human body could endure without dying, how to keep a prisoner alive long enough to talk. While the allegations of torture spread, the Tupamaros played their next card. They understood something crucial. If Dan Mitrione was to matter, the public had to see him not just as a symbol of American intervention, but as a man. From their hidden people's prison, the Tupamaros released audio tapes to the press. On the recordings, Mitrione sounded calm, almost resigned. He spoke about his health. He spoke tenderly about his wife, about his 9 children waiting for him in Indiana. He didn't sound like a monster. He sounded like a pawn. Public opinion wavered. Empathy crept in, and that's when the demand was made. The price for Mitrione's life was not money, but people. The immediate release of 150 political prisoners held in Uruguayan jails. A deadline was set. The clock began to tick. If the Tupamaros expected mercy from those in power, they had badly misjudged the moment. In Montevideo, President Jorge Pacheco Areco refused all negotiations. Instead, he declared a total state of siege. In Washington, President Richard Nixon was equally unyielding. The directive was simple: no concessions. Dan Mitrione, the loyal civil servant, was abandoned by the very governments that had sent him into the storm. Montevideo transformed overnight. Police flooded the streets, raids, checkpoints. Doors kicked in across the capital as security forces tore the city apart in a desperate race against the deadline. They got close, too close. In a massive dragnet, the police captured the intellectual leadership of the Tupamaros, their strategists, their thinkers, their restraint, gone in a single night. It was the turning point. Inside the cell where Mitrione was held, everything changed. With the moderates in handcuffs, the hardliners seized control. They were cornered. Their leverage was gone. The governments would not move. The kidnappers now faced a final, irreversible choice: release Mitrione, admit defeat, and appear weak, or kill him and cross the line from revolutionary myth to murder. August 10, 1970. The deadline passed. In the early hours of the morning, an anonymous call came into a local radio station. Police were directed to a quiet residential street. Parked at the curb was a stolen 1948 Buick convertible. In the back seat lay Dan Mitrione. He had been shot 4 times, twice in the head. The traffic consultant was gone, and with him, the illusion of the Switzerland of America finally died. In Richmond, Indiana, the bands played. Dan Mitrione returned home not as a traffic consultant, but as a martyr. He was laid to rest in a gold casket. The funeral became a spectacle of grief and patriotism. Even Frank Sinatra and Jerry Lewis performed at a benefit for his family. To his government, Mitrione was a hero, an American who had died defending democracy. But 2,000 miles away, in the country once called the Switzerland of America, the lights were going out. The murder of Dan Mitrione did not save the Tupamaros. It destroyed them. His death handed the military the justification it had been waiting for. Tanks rolled into the streets. Congress was dissolved. The democracy that had been the envy of a continent was quietly suffocated. For the next 12 years, Uruguay lived under a brutal military dictatorship. The exception had become the rule. And as time passed, the silence began to crack. Testimony emerged. Documents surfaced. Former Uruguayan officials and Cuban double agents confirmed the Tupamaros' darkest claims. Mitrione had built the soundproof room. He had taught the classes. The traffic consultant had indeed brought American efficiency to Montevideo, but it was the efficiency of pain. In the end, there were no winners in the back seat of that Buick. By killing him, the Tupamaros lost what remained of their moral authority, trading their Robin Hood myth for the stain of execution. By sending him, the United States forfeited its moral high ground, exposing the machinery behind its promises of security and order. The Switzerland of America is gone now, preserved only in faded postcards and memory. A quiet, tragic warning from history itself. When you invite foreign ghosts to guard your home, don't be surprised when they begin to haunt it. The story of Dan Mitrione does not end in the backseat of a Buick. It lingers. It lingers in the quiet deals struck in the name of order, in the language of advisors and consultants, in the places where suffering is refined, systematized, and exported with a stamp of approval. Mitrione was not a monster from a horror story. He was something far more unsettling. He was ordinary, official, authorized. His death was loud. The consequences were quieter and longer lasting. Uruguay lost its innocence. The United States lost plausible deniability, and the Cold War left another fingerprint it never fully wiped away. There are no clean endings here, only lessons buried under flags, ceremonies, and carefully chosen words. And when stories like this fade, it's rarely because they were resolved. It's because they were useful. Next time, we leave the noise behind. No crowds, no speeches, no ideology shouting for attention. Just distance, isolation, and a place where mistakes don't echo, they freeze. Antarctica, because sometimes the most dangerous stories aren't the ones where everyone is watching, but the ones that unfold where no one is meant to look at all. Stay curious, stay cautious, and remember, the most terrifying acts are often carried out by people who insist they're just doing their job.